off track is a global speaker and career storyteller who has worked as a journalist, a nonprofit executive, and a contact marketing strategist and consultant. He will show us 6 steps to get started with storytelling for our organization. Please help me in welcoming Christoph.
Thank you. All right. Do you guys know what they were doing up here? Fixing. It's not like the Skycam or whatever. It's going to fall on us. They were fixing the PowerPoint, right? So I think, isn't that right? PowerPoint didn't work? So unfortunately, my entire presentation is shot because I had 77 PowerPoint slides, which are timed exactly, and I was going to make it through. But now I don't have enough time, right? Because we cut in 10 minutes into the session. I'm totally kidding. I do not use PowerPoint, but the reason I bring this up is because one of the biggest things with storytelling is you have to be unique. And one way that's super easy for me to be unique is, guess what? How many PowerPoint decks have you looked at today? Has anybody texted home or tweeted to your followers, this is the best conference, best PowerPoints ever? I'm so happy I came to Des Moines for the PowerPoints alone. Anybody? No. I'm full of it, right? Nobody ever does that. So the first way to actually be unique is to do different things. We actually didn't have this discussion before I came out here. But this thing, podium, I never use a podium. And even when we have lengthy discussions, and we did not have this discussion here, just so you know, so nobody did anything wrong. But even when I have lengthy discussions about, I don't need a podium, you know what's on the stage every single time? A podium. It doesn't make any difference where I speak, because that's the status quo. So we're going to talk about how do you challenge the status quo, and how do you forget about always being politically correct, because that's not actually always actual correctness. So, since I don't have PowerPoint, since the PowerPoint thing broke, if you want to write this down, you can win a copy of my book. It's right over there. But I'm not going to pick on you. I hate when people pick on me if I don't want to be picked on, and whoever wants to. But you do have to speak to get a book. These rules are made up on the spot, so if you don't like them, you can appeal them. But good luck. So the 6 steps. So if you only came to get the 6 steps, you can write them down. You can go and leave and have a drink at the bar, or I don't know what time it even is. 1 o'clock. Maybe it's a little early. So the 6 steps, and then we're going to talk about them. Number 1, I would write them down. There will be a test. You have to make the decision that you actually want to go. So the decision, in short. You don't have to get this word for word. And then number 2, the plan. We're going to talk about plans. And then number 3, the skills. Number 4, the execution. I've seen fantastic plans. They were perfect until you had to implement them. And then number 5, the refinement. And number 6, the sustainability. Everybody got it? Did you write it down on paper, your iPhone, or what? Android? So if you want to tweet, I would encourage you. I'm at @CTrap on Twitter. That's the hashtag. So number 1, what's the first thing we have to think about? Who can tell me? You just wrote it down. Oh, my God. So the rule was, what was it again? What? You have to speak, but everybody spoke at the same time. Maybe I should make you raise your hands. But what was number 1 again? Here you go. Number 1 was you have to make the decision. So the rule was supposed to be whoever says it first wins, but that never works. So I'll pick on whoever I'm looking at the time. Okay, so you have to make the decision to actually do it. And how do you make the decision to actually start sharing better stories? You have to find a pain point, right? So why would I share stories if it doesn't help me do anything in my life, right? So you have to figure out something isn't working. I'm not happy. I don't bring in clients. My nonprofit, the one I'm sitting on the board on, they have an increased donations. Nobody wants to volunteer. Whatever it might be, you have to figure some kind of problem out, right, that you're trying to solve. It actually has to hurt. And then you have to decide that you want to do it. Now I'm sitting, I used to weigh 330 pounds. Any guesses how much I weigh now? 320? 220. Whew, 10 pounds, yes. This was successful. Yeah, really close, yep. So I weigh like over 100 pounds less, and I actually went down to like 190. And I had to make up my mind. I had to make the decision to actually lose that weight. And you know what happened? I started gaining weight because I made the decision to do it, but I didn't do anything about it, right? But first I had to get to that pain point. So the pain point was that my wife took this picture of me and my grandma, who weighs maybe like 130, 140, and I'm standing next to her, and I'm wearing like a quadruple X or whatever 5X is, like that kind of shirt, and I still barely fit in the thing, and it was just super disgusting. This is where I could show you a visual, but I don't want to because it's super gross, so thank you for the PowerPoint. It's not working. But the point is you have to get to the level of something needs to change. And if you're super perfect, enough money's coming in, I'm so happy, everything is great. Anybody at that stage? Anybody? Like, no hand ever goes up when I ask that. It's crazy. So even if you're at that stage, sometimes I have CEOs say to me, it's great, we're making billions, we're making whatever, people want to work here, our turnover rate is under the national average. And I say, what's the national average? Oh, like 55%. I'm actually not kidding. That is actually the turnover rate for most industries, for people leaving. He's always like 48, so we're great. I'm like, half of your staff leaves in any given year. That is not great, right? So you have to figure out what that is. So then, number two, what's number two? What? The plan. I don't know if you said it first, but you think so? Okay, good. Fantastic. So then you have to come up with a plan. And I've done plans, especially, you know what they do in nonprofits? I used to be a nonprofit executive. They gave me a big office, nice title. And you know what nonprofits do? They have committee meetings for like everything. Is this tie straight, Christoph? Is this tie straight? Let's have a committee meeting to discuss. And we will let you know. We're bringing in highly qualified people. And I'm not saying these people are not highly qualified. I appreciate volunteers. I am a volunteer myself. But we don't always need everything to be so difficult to actually implement. So you know what people do? They come up with 69-page plans. Who in here has ever seen a 69-page plan that actually has been executed? No? Are you guys just tired, or are you saying no? You're saying no, right? Because it's impossible. Even if they use that plan later on, try to get somebody in trouble, not even the lawyers can keep track of that plan. It's impossible. So what you have to do, you have to come up with a plan that's actually implementable. And the way you do that is 2 to 10 pages. Now, I used to say 2 to 5 pages, and then people say, oh, 5 pages, we need more than that. I'm like, okay, 2 to 10. That's actually too long. Because you can't even remember what's in that plan when you're trying to do it. And then, like those, it's like the employee reviews everybody does, right? And we write the goals on January 1st, and then we quickly forget them by January 15th. And then in December, we look at them again and we say, did we reach all those goals? Oh, yep. What goals again? Do you know what I mean? Baloney, doesn't work. So you have to have a plan that actually works, and you have to write it down. A plan that's not written down doesn't work. So we have a family plan. It's not written down. So my family came with me because we do live in Cedar Rapids. So I'm really glad that we could drive here because, when I have to fly, it doesn't really work too well because it gets expensive before you know it. And so we had a plan for this trip. Guess how many planes we had? Are you all calculating or wondering if this is a trick question? How many what? How many people in the family? Exactly. 4 people are in the family, and the one is a 2-year-old, and I swear we still had 4 plans. And none of them had anything, they're not even related. What, Dad? You're speaking at a conference? What? I thought we were just going to the pool. Do you know what I mean? Like, doesn't work if it's not written down. Now, I'm not even saying you have to do a plan for your family, but you have to write it down. And then here's the other thing you have to do with it. You have to refer back to it. So sometimes this is really hard because all of us grew up in the industrial age, right? So let me explain that to you. So what that means is we plan, and then we do, and we do, keep going, right? We just keep going, like we do this plan, and that's it. So remember when everybody here has an iPhone? Anybody have an Android? My sympathies to the Android users. But iPhone, thumbs up, guys. I didn't see whose hand went up, but free books for all the iPhone users? No, I don't have that many. But so you remember when the iPhone first came out and everybody goes, why can't they ever get it right the first time? Why is there like 59 updates every 3 days? Everybody remember that? Like anybody still think that? It's totally fine to admit it, that that is still your opinion. But what that is it used to be you buy something and that's it, right? There's no updates. That's how we used to work. That's how marketing used to happen. That's how everything used to happen. And today, in 2016, things reiterate continuously. They change all the time. So for example, we are going to talk about some of these networks, but we're not going to talk about exactly how to do every little bitty thing. And here's why. Because every little bitty thing changes like every 2 days. I had a client I'm working with in Kansas City. They called me the other day and they said, we want to do this, and this is what you told us 6 months ago. Is this still correct? No. Not because I don't know what I'm talking about, but stuff changes all the time. So you have to think about how do you apply your plan. And this is the problem with 69-page plans, because they're so specific, you can't do it. The first social media policy I wrote was so bad. I'm so ashamed of it today. But it said, like, don't do this on Facebook. Don't do this on MySpace. Who is still on MySpace? Anybody? Do you know who? How many people a month do you think go to MySpace? So nobody uses MySpace, right? And everybody agree? Nobody uses it, correct? Okay, so how many people do you think in a month go to MySpace? It still exists. 100. Any other guesses? If anybody ever gets this right, I should give out a book. 59 million per month. They're all musicians. I jokingly say, since this is being recorded, I say jokingly. I jokingly say if they were any good, they'd be on Pandora. But 59 million musicians. So it's very specific, right? Very rarely do I talk to anybody that MySpace is actually relevant to. But my first social media policy was about, on MySpace, don't do this, on blah, blah, very, very specific. And then something changes, and you could care less about MySpace. So you have to be very high level, conceptually. This is what we're trying to do. This is how we're going to do it. And then you update your plan. And this piece is really hard for long-term C-level executives. Christoph, now we have this plan. And you brought it to this meeting. And you just wrote on it. What does that mean? Does that mean you're going to change that? I'm like, yes. Why? Because something just changed. But it's the plan. We all agreed to it. I ran it by my committee. They all said aye and motion to adjourn, all that fancy stuff. And that's kind of how, you have to just continue to evolve your plan. But you don't evolve your top level, how you do it. I'll tell you about myself, for example. In storytelling, I evolve all the time. Now I like Twitter. Now I like Instagram. Now I like LinkedIn. Now I'm on Facebook. Now I've given up on Facebook because you know who was on Facebook anymore? Like my mom. And I'm like, I don't want to show her my pictures. And then she likes them and comments and leaves weird comments. It's like, yeah, I'm going over here. So, but bottom line is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, live video, maybe if you're really ambitious. Those are the networks you want to be on. Your website, it's still important, maybe a blog. But you do want to make a plan. So for me, I move between those networks, and I use whatever is currently relevant to me. And then I wrote a book. Do you know why I wrote a book? So for years I said, I'm not going to write a book. Just read my blog. Who reads books? Well, it turns out all kinds of people read books. And when you give them a book, now you can say, look, I'm an author. And then sometimes people say, I wrote the book on authentic storytelling, which is actually correct, because nobody else talks about the exact same thing. Do you know what I mean? So you have to think about how do you apply your plan. So number 3, skills. I heard it over here somewhere. Who? Okay. Wow. Unanimous. This is a great committee. They all voted for you. Fantastic. The most functional committee. They all got $1. Okay. Great. What was it again? Skills. So who here has the skills to tell stories? Are all the hands going up? I won't pick on you if you don't want to be picked on, but I'm just asking. So everybody or no? Anybody? So since nobody's hand went up, what happened to them? I've never met a child that can't tell good stories. In fact, sometimes I think children tell stories that should never be told. I mean, seriously. You know, but so every child knows how to tell stories. But here's what happens. My wife is a teacher, so I'm not picking on teachers. Are you waiting for the but? Because it wants to slip out. But the education system teaches us to look for the right or wrong, or the right answer. They don't teach you how to look for the wrong answer. They teach you how to look for the right answer. And to make it even worse, they teach you to get the right answer the fastest. Do you agree? Everybody hands goes up, right? Like, I know the answer. Here's the answer. Yes, I know. Did I get it first? Did I get it right? But the problem is, and I know this for a fact that this is true, I had 3 7-year-olds in the back of the car, and they were arguing over like the stupidest thing. And I said, do you guys think that there could be multiple answers? And they said, Mr. Trapp, that's not possible. There's always a right answer. Always, because that's what we're taught. But maybe there isn't always just one right answer. Now, some things there are right or wrong answers, like the iPhone Android thing. Android, wrong answer. iPhone, right answer. See what I mean? I mean, we can agree on that, right? But the bottom line is, this is not endorsed by Apple in any way. Make sure you get that on tape. Not a commercial for Apple. But you have to get that in your head that there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer to the story overall. Now I get it. You guys are numbers people. Yes, there are right answers when you do math. They didn't ask me to come here to talk about math. I know nothing about math. My favorite story when it comes to math is I go to my CFO and I say, Chris, this is not adding up at all. And she says, yeah, I know, because there should be subtraction. True story. I mean, really. So you have to think about there's no right or wrong answer, right? That's important. And then you have to actually share your story. And that's hard. You know what happens when you share your story and somebody else thinks you just picked the wrong answer? Do you know what happens? They tear it apart, right? The digital, especially online, the digital lynch mob gets a hold of you. And here's actually what happens. Once you do this well, not everybody will love you. Now, I know all of you guys love me, I'm sure, but there's probably 1 or 1 1/4 persons in here that will say, what is this guy talking about? I rather would have heard about the Iowa sales tax for 2 more hours instead of storytelling. You know, I get it. Not everybody loves me. And not everybody loves us. Get over it. It's always been that way. The only thing that's different is when you start sharing your stories, it will be more public, right? Because some people will disagree. But you know what people disagreeing with you is actually a sign-off, and this has nothing to do with politics. I am not going to talk about politics. You know the presidential election we're talking about? This is not and it has nothing to do with this. We're not talking about that. But you know what happens when people publicly disagree with you? It means that, first of all, you're sharing good stories, your stories. Number 2 is you're actually reaching people. Because if nobody responds ever to you, you know what that means? It means nobody's paying attention to you because you're saying the same crap everybody else is saying. CRAP is an acronym. Did you know that? You thought I was just using bad words, as my daughter would say. But so CRAP stands for content, really annoying to people. So this is the crap we try to ignore, right? So you don't pay attention to it. Like you get a little ad, you don't pay attention to it unless it's super relevant. Somebody talks about something you don't care about, you don't pay attention to it. So you can't share crap. You have to share things like that. Now, once you get into it, once you get used to not everybody loving you, what happens is the people you actually want to be loved by love you even more. This is a true thing. I've seen it happen many, many times. They love you more. And you know what happens then? People donate more. People want to work with you. People buy your product. People share your story. The people who actually love you. And if you're always neutral, you know what happens when you're always neutral? Who's neutral here? Anybody? Nobody's neutral. All my stories are totally biased towards my own opinion. I mean, seriously. Nobody's ever neutral. So like all these nonprofits, they say, we have no opinion about this. And then they have a committee meeting to talk about the opinion they don't have. Right? Doesn't work. Everybody knows what it is, guys. Come on. Just might as well share it unless there's a law why you can't share it. I get it. There's some things you can't talk about. But so then once you embrace that, it's actually kind of fun and it helps advance your story. So who has watched Jimmy Kimmel? Anybody? Live, it's like on super late. Jimmy Kimmel at night. He has the mean tweets thing. Have you seen that? Like celebrities read the mean tweets people have said about them. And they try to do it with a straight face. Good luck. So what I did my own mean tweets. And we can tweet out the link later. But basically I said, here's all the bad things people have said about me. And the people that like me shared it and actually got back to me and said, this was so much fun. Keep going. And I'm like, keep going, getting crap? No. That just hurts. But you kind of have to move past that. Not everybody's going to love us. It's a fact of life. The only thing is, previously, you may not have known that people don't love you. What were we talking about? Skills? Okay. Well, how much time do we have? Like 5 hours? 30 minutes. Okay, we'll get back to the skills. But everybody actually has the skills. You just can't overthink it. Right? And then you have to make it a habit. So who can write? Anybody? Everybody can write, right? I mean, everybody's like writing stuff down right now. Or are you just drawing? No, you're writing, right? Everybody can write. So just write your story. Write things. Write something that happened. Everybody can actually do it. If you're not a writer, congratulations. That's actually okay. You can now do like selfie video. Have you seen those videos? People do that. And I'm not saying everybody here will become a YouTube star or that you even want to, but there's people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year sharing videos that are like this. And sometimes they're not even interesting to me because I don't love them, but everybody else loves them. Do you know what I mean? So you have the skills. You can do video. You can record audio if you want to. You can tweet. You can do it on LinkedIn. But here's the problem. Why people don't do it. What happens when you sit down and you write something down? Do I really want to say that? Is this how I want to sound? Hey, could you read this article for me and then could you pass it on? Could everybody approve it? We should have a committee meeting. Will you guys be on my committee? So as you can see, I love committees. But you cannot be stuck in this approval hell kind of thing. You know what happens when you take a piece of content and you pass it on? You put people in approval hell. And when you get it back, you get a bunch of crap. Remember? Content really annoying to people. Doesn't work. So you have to figure out how do you publish things quickly and how do you publish them with the least amount of approval layers. Now, there are reasons why you need some people to read it, right? If I'm a CEO of a small organization, I want to read my stories. Maybe I need to think about how do I approve them, what do I change. But you want to cut down. You don't want to have it run by all these different people. When I was in the nonprofit world, I was tasked to move them into the digital realm. But they were doing a lot of print brochures. You know how print brochures, everybody has ever done a print brochure or anything printed? You know how print brochures are produced? Like, first of all, they got like 3 committees. And then they write stuff. and then everybody edits, and then this person edits, and this person changes it back, and then that person changes again, and then it's just like this vicious cycle. And then they publish the brochure, they send it to everybody, and how many times does a brochure actually work? Who has success stories? Anybody? Can anybody tell me? We've got our phones were ringing off the hook because the brochure dropped today. And they called and they said, your stock photography is so beautiful, and this person looks so happy. Where are they from? I'd like to meet them. iStock.com. It doesn't work. So you want to kind of make that as simple as you can, and you want to move away from the traditional marketing speak, and picking on things. So everybody has a skill, and you might as well just get that in your head. Now, not everybody has the same level of skill, right? Are you with me? So not everybody writes like the superstar writers, but it's not you, right? So for example, when I started blogging, so I have like 20,000 people on my blog now in a month, and when I speak for like other companies, like I can't have them actually edit my stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because everybody knows my voice. So if it all of a sudden sounds totally different, it doesn't work. But had I started differently, maybe I would have hired a ghostwriter if I had that kind of money, for example. But so there's other ways around it to get started. But everybody has a skill. Everybody can go, and you just have to figure out how to do it. Now, some of you have already won the book. Then you have to figure out how to actually implement it. Is that the next? What's the next one? Wow, it's like I wrote these. Who said it? Maybe did somebody over here say it? This guy, you think? Okay, that's like the longest walk ever. Okay, what was it again? Execution? Did you even speak up? Yes. Okay, fantastic. I'm just checking. Honest. Me? Did I speak up? I haven't said a word yet. So execution is the next thing. So sometimes today we call these hacks. Have you heard that? Like, how do we hack life? How do I sleep longer by sleeping less? Whatever. Bunch of crap, right? I mean, seriously, have you heard those things? It's crazy. So, but there are actual hacks that you can do. So the book that some of you have, guess where I wrote it? So how do you picture somebody writing a book? Somebody tell me. Paint the picture. No right or wrong answer. In your head, how does it look when somebody's writing their book? A window? Just got out of bed. Yep. Commute down the steps. Yep. Dark room, right, in the back. Typewriter. That piece of paper didn't work. Gotta do it again. Now I'm dating myself. But you see what I'm saying? Like, and nobody actually gave the most accurate answer for me. What? Oh my goodness, you do not want to see my handwriting at all. Fantastic answer. So most of that book was indeed written on my iPhone. Yes, you can probably do it on Androids. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if you can. But I wrote it on my iPhone on airplanes, for the most part, on airplanes. Like I'm flying somewhere, I'm on the airplane, I'm writing my book. Like I'm just writing. In fact, I'm writing it so much, they always come over and they say, please put your phone in airplane mode so we can take off because our plane depends on your phone. But I'm like, it's already on airplane mode. It has been. I'm busy writing. But the whole thing has been, seriously, for the most part, maybe like 10% were written on the laptop. But everything has been written on the iPhone. So what I determined to do is I figure out these hacks, how to do things quicker, right? So people say to me, like now, the last few weeks, I've blogged. Blogging still works. It really does. And the last few weeks, I've blogged daily. It wasn't actually a goal, but I was just kind of trying to figure out how to do it. And so what I determined is that between 6:45 a.m. and 7:15, so this is the half an hour between everybody is dressed, except myself, just to paint the picture, and then 7:15, everybody leaves for school, right? Or they go, they go to work. So, and I have to help get them out the door. But in that half an hour, it's actually fairly quiet because they're watching TV, everybody is doing whatever. So I have that 30 minutes, I sit down and I write. And every day I publish a blog post. So I figure out another hack. So you have to find those little moments of where you can do things. Now, not everybody is in an airplane often, so what's your airplane? What's similar to that for you? And you have to figure out what are the tools. You know what people say to me when I say I blog on my phone? See, I couldn't do it. I'm like, and that's why. And they said, no, that's not it. It's because you have to type with your finger or your thumb or whatever, and then like you can't find photos. I'm like, oh, you mean the photos of the beautiful stock art image people? Yes. All those different things, there's always 100 excuses of why you can't do it. I can find so many excuses for everything. You know how hard it is to speak in front of people? Because like some of you are looking at me like, and I'm thinking, do they like me? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is this vest long enough? Can they tell I gained 2 pounds? Is the tie straight? Is it? Do I have chocolate on my face? Good, because I haven't had chocolate in like 2 days. But you know what I mean? Like, it's actually, I could find 100 reasons why I should never, ever speak in front of people. And yet I'm standing up here because I put the excuses aside. So you have to think about why you can do it if you actually want to do it. So you go back to the initial thing. Why can you do it? And why do you want to do it? And then you just kind of go do it. You do have to get a little bit of buy-in from some people. So I write a lot about personal things, not like 100% of the time, but from time to time. And guess who I need to get buy-in from? My wife, right? At least I need to show it to her. And I guess if she doesn't scream at me, I'm good to go. But I do need to get buy-in from her, from your boss, maybe. So if you're writing about things, especially early on, like once you get going, and if you have a certain style, like people will never even know what you're talking about, like what specifically prompted something. But early on, you probably want to kind of feel out your boss or figure out what's okay and what's not okay to share, because you cannot share things that are illegal to share. You may not want to share things that are going to get you fired, right? But here's my tip on getting fired. I have not been fired. I have no story like that. But here's my tip on not to get fired. Think about what can you share that's actually educational. And 99% of the time, maybe 100, you will be just fine because you're not picking on somebody. You know how everybody is now picking on everybody today? Like even like the election, it's like everybody's picking on everything. I can't even keep track on who's mad at who or what they're talking about. But think about what can you share that's educational. So here's an example. San Francisco, super expensive, right, to live. So this person was making very little money, and she was working for a technology company. And she blogged about how this technology company is ripping people off and you can't live on this kind of money and you have to, all like a laundry list of stuff. Not crap, because it was actually pretty interesting to read. And then, of course, guess what happened? The CEO of that company followed up with his own blog post, his or her, I don't even know who it was, but they followed with their own blog post and said, this person has been relieved of her duties. And so what happened is, what's kind of interesting, so first of all, I think most people who fire people for sharing things, I think most of the time they're actually overreacting, and it's a sign of the industrial age, and they're not over here yet necessarily. There are reasons to let people go, but sometimes I think we're probably overthinking it. But here's what that blogger actually did wrong. She picked a fight with somebody she couldn't win with no matter what, right? But you know what she could have done? Because San Francisco is super expensive. It really is super expensive. And she could have written a blog post how hard it is to live in San Francisco and how she's making it so far. And you know what? That would have been probably really interesting without picking a fight with her employer who has given her the little bitty salary. So something to think about is how do you turn it into something educational? If it's not educational or informational, it doesn't work. I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting one time, and this executive said, Are there any questions? And there were no questions. Do you know what silence means? Ooh. At least everybody noticed that. So, you know what silence means? What? Disagreement. Silence means disagreement. So if everybody is sitting there and you say, this is what we're going to do, and everybody just goes, that is not agreement. So there's actually some teams, some companies, you know what they do? They have a rule. They say, do you agree or disagree? And you have to go, thumbs up. Like you visually, like in the airplane, you know, if you're in the exit row, you have to say, yes, you can help, and you will open that door in the case of an emergency, right? They don't say, doesn't work. Doesn't work. It means disagreement. So here's what I did. So I could have written about, I was in this meeting, this stupid executive, nobody buys in with her because she doesn't know what she's talking about, all this other stuff. And then the next day I probably would have been fired, right? Would have named her by name. Then there's a lawsuit, and you see where this is going, right? But what I actually did is I didn't write it like that. I wrote a blog post on how silence means disagreement. Do you see what I'm talking about? And that's still, people read it. But I didn't specifically say it was this incident that prompted it. And that incident actually didn't prompt it. It started to get me to think about it. But all these incidences in my life, I have plenty of examples where people are just sitting there and looking. It's like, oh, is it time to go? Maybe I should check Twitter. So think about how do you make it educational and without necessarily attacking people. Because here's the thing. Not attacking people can actually be a differentiator. Do you agree with that? Do you know why? Because everybody's attacking everybody. I mean, turn on the TV. Some of those TV channels, I think, they don't know how to speak in their inside voice. Hashtag dad life. Okay, what's the next one? What? Refinement. So who said that? Who should I give it to? Her, do you think? Are you an iPhone user? Oh. Please pass it back. She did say iPhone earlier, though. Good way to know your audience. Refinement. And then, continuously, you refine what's working and what's not working. So, for example, for me, I write about storytelling. I share storytelling stuff. On my blog, my personal stories used to be the most read stories. Like every time I wrote about, like we lost a son, right, a stillbirth, other things, other bad things happened to us. Like even I wrote about, they're not comparable, I get it, but like the last car drive of my dog before I had to put him down, after 14 years with us. I wrote about those things, and they were really, really, really popular early on my blog. And I think they were popular because everybody knew me who read the thing. Do you know what I mean? And that's why they were popular. So I tried to do more of that. But then what started happening is every time I write about something social media related that nobody else has written about, those things take off, right? So you read news, like this is new in social media, this is new, whatever. But here's the thing with news media. You know what news media does? They cover things at like this level. You know what I mean? It's like everything is an executive summary. So what I've started to notice is when they write it up here, and I figured out how to actually solve the problem or how to execute it, I write at this level. And you know what happens? Those articles get a lot of traffic because people can't find anywhere else to actually figure out how to do it because everybody writes at this level. Talk about the news media for a second. Who's been to an event that the news media has covered after you went to the event? Anybody? No? Like if your hand goes like this, I can't see it. A lot of people? No. Okay, who's been quoted in the news media? Anybody? Some people. And who thought after the event or after being quoted, did we go to the same event? Anybody? Yes? Yes. And when you were quoted, you were like, did they talk to me? Anybody over there? No? Anybody ever misquoted? So the reason that happens is because it's perception, right? And remember we talked about the right or wrong way of how to tell a story? And their perception is just different. Now, if you were to come to me as a reporter, which I used to be many years ago, you would have said that to me. I would have been like, no, I am unbiased. I'm the fourth estate or whatever. You know? So you have to keep that in mind. But you have to refine what you're doing, how you're doing it, how you're sharing things. So for example, if you're planning, let's say you ever plan on hiring like a Twitter coordinator, right? Like a Twitter coordinator. Bad idea. Don't even hire that role. And especially don't hire like an entry-level person. Because just because they're a millennial and have used Twitter for a couple years, and while in college, while drunk 90% of the time, that does not qualify them to run Twitter for your organization at all. I'm not saying no millennials can run Twitter for you. In fact, they can. But I'm just telling you, that is not the only qualification to be able to do that. So, but you have to think about what's the overarching task, right? So like a social media coordinator, social media person, writer. For example, on my team, I don't even hire writers. But even though that's what they do most of the time, I hire strategists. And the reason I call them strategists because sometimes they write and sometimes they help people. You know, so you don't want to put people too much in a corner when you know it might change, or you don't know, that's part of the problem. It might change in a couple days anyways. So who thinks you can outweigh change? Do you know what I mean? Have you never been in these meetings when people say, the internet will go away? You have, right? Totally, it will go away. Newspapers will go away too. And they're still around, like 15 years after people told me that newspapers are dead. Email is dead too. How many emails did you get today? Who's sitting here right now wondering, I wonder how many emails I've gotten since I've been sitting down. Anybody? Yep, you can admit it. I'm thinking the same thing. And I'm like, wow, how many emails? I'll be spending my weekend doing that. So you can't outweigh change. You have to just roll with the change, and that's why it's important to have that high-level strategy of what you're going to do and then refine as you go. And you have to do it right away. Gary Vaynerchuk, they moved here from Belarus or something when he was like 3, and his dad started a wine company, or he brought his wine company here. And finally, the dad says, you need to work in my wine company. And he says, ooh, okay, let's think about that. Because the dad was working like 16-hour days. So Gary actually went out and started sharing wine content on YouTube. Anybody here know who I'm talking about? No? Anybody like wine? I'm not a wine drinker at all, but it's a good story. So, but basically, he just shared information about wine. This is the kind of wine you want in this situation. I don't even know what the stories are, honestly. But so he shared information about wine all the time. And he grew his dad's business from 3 million to what? 20, 50, 30. Aren't you guys the numbers people? You should know. Can't you have like a projection graph? I'm kidding. 60 million in 3 years. $60 million in revenue. And he did that by sharing stories. But here's what he does today still. He adjusts so quickly, people can't even keep up with him, right? Like there's a new network, he tries it and he hits it so hard and then he dumps it. And he even said one time, I use Vine. Has anybody used Vine? It's like this really obscure video network for Twitter. And he said, I used it and I really hit it hard and it worked for 18 months. And my friend said, see, you wasted all your time. And he goes, I did not. I brought in revenue in those 18 months. But the trick is you have to hit it right away. Okay, what's the next one? Sustainability. We just passed that back. I have no idea. Whoever looks like they like to read. Sustainability. So you have to keep going. I just blogged about this sometime this weekend. It's coming out. Most things in storytelling are singles. You guys all get the baseball analogies, right? They're singles, not home runs. So when you have people sitting around a committee and coming up with a brochure, you know what they're banking on? that brochure will be a home run. And I can guarantee that it will not be a home run most of the time without even looking at it. Most of the time. There's always exceptions. So I looked this up the other day. The top major league hitters, guess what the percentage is of home runs? 2 hits. Oh, 2 at bats. That would be even lower. To hits. So they have this many hits. And then what percentage is home runs? Say when. Under 5. I mean, it depends, honestly, on who it is. But it's under 5% for like the top 10. And some of them were like, I think it was Derek Jeter was number 5 or something. And he has like under 2%. So it's super low. It's the same thing with content. It's really, and sharing your stories. It's really hard to hit a home run. And people always question me, is this going to be a home run? Are we going to get this? Is this going to work? And I've done this for like 20 years. And you know what happens? Stuff I think will take off strikes out. And stuff I think is super lame takes off. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit of a science to it. The science is that here's how you tell a story. Good stories have conflict. They're authentic. There's usually a hero. But the bottom line, why I don't highlight this too much, is you don't need to overthink it. Do you know? Because you know what people sometimes do when we ask them to share their story? Will anybody care? I don't want to brag, you know, so get help. Somebody else can share your story for you. But basically, you have to figure out how to keep going. So if you have a small staff, maybe you do it once a week. Maybe you empower other people to do it. You know, the biggest reason why people are not sharing stories because they think they will get in trouble. I remember writing an article one time about why I went from a media company to a nonprofit, because the media company, they were really moving forward, being very innovative, and I still went to a nonprofit, and the question I got for days at a time was, why would you leave? Weren't you on the right track? I'm like, yeah, we were, but they actually need different kind of help, and this sounds like a really good opportunity to get them there as a nonprofit. And so I wrote about it, and the next day my CEO comes in and says, I read your blog post. I'm like, oh yeah, and? What'd you think? You know, and I knew there was nothing in there to upset anybody because I write with a purpose, right? But I still was a little frightened. We'll call it that. But it's hard because we don't want to get in trouble. And that's, we want to think about that. How do we empower people? So the refinement, the sustainability is important to keep going. Maybe you need to hire people. Maybe you need help. Maybe you need a writer. Maybe you just need 30 minutes blocked off in the week to do it. But if you don't keep going, you will never win the game. Do you know how many at-bats people have, even the top hitters? The top hitters in baseball also have the most strikeouts. Do you know what I mean? That's crazy, right? It's like, oh my God, how many times did they fail? I don't want to fail, right? Because we don't want to fail. We want to be so safe. So you have to swing to actually make it work. Is there one more? No? That's the last one. Are you sure? Okay, good. So now, since I have more books, but so now this is kind of the process you have to go through, and you have to implement it. The biggest thing is you have to implement it. And maybe you don't want to do it. And maybe you say, I'm fine. We can outweight it. But the bottom line is, if you want to be even more successful, the people who tell the best stories win. And the one thing is that, you know what you can't do with storytelling? It can't be commoditized. You know the race to the bottom? You know that race is actually winnable? Do you know what I mean? Whoever can be the cheapest to do it, it actually can be won. But you can't be beat at sharing your own stories, figuring out what you stand for, what your expertise is, how you're going to share it, what's the point of it, and then just keep going. And again, I would do it on all these different channels. And I'm talking about social media, your website, your blog, but I'm also talking offline. One time, I was given a presentation to board of directors, and it didn't even say social media on there. And they said to me, but how about offline? We still talk to people. I'm like, I know. Tie it all together, right? So the stuff I say here, the stuff I say in a meeting over coffee, the things I say on my blog, the things I say on Twitter, wherever, it's all the same stuff. Like when you read my book, it's all the same information, quite honestly. It's the same story, except there's new chapters as I'm moving forward. So I hope it's helpful. I hope you can do it. I hope you start. The biggest problem is to get started. And it's like going to the gym. Once you go to the gym, it's hard to go to the gym, right? Before you start. And then once you start, is it easy or hard? Then it's hard to stop. Right? So I'm always careful because one time somebody said, then it's hard to keep going. No. Once you get into the habit, it's actually super hard to stop. So like I literally cannot not share things now. I already, every time I speak, I get like 4 stories waiting, and I'm like, I should write this down. Can I write this down quick? Is this rude if I make a note while I'm speaking? So you can't stop, so you have to make it happen. So I hope you get started or keep going if you haven't. Thanks, everybody. Are there any? Yeah.
Anybody have any questions for Christoph?
Questions, disagreements, debates. I will not interrupt you. Okay. You bet.
For sharing your story with us.
You bet. Thank you.
Tim? Sorry about that. Thank you, Christoph, for sharing your story. 10 minutes. We'll be back here at 10 minutes to 2, if that's all right. Thank you.